Hello and welcome to the MICS conference. My name is Jonathan Benson. I'm a solutions architect at NVIDIA. Today I'm going to be talking about AI, the new electricity. I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean by that very soon. I'm coming to you recording this talk from my home office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I know that all of us would have preferred to meet together in person in Milwaukee. But that just is simply not possible in this particular time. So I thank you all for tuning into the recording of this talk. I want to thank especially Derek Riley and the other organizers of the MICS conference for allowing me an opportunity to share a little bit about what NVIDIA is doing in artificial intelligence. Before I get started with the content of the talk, I wanted to make a comment about the naming of your conference, specifically the moniker Midwest or the label Midwest Instruction and Computing Symposium. I was very happy to see you call this conference the Midwest Instruction and Computing Symposium. I was born and raised in rural South Dakota. And for that entire time, I thought of myself as being from the Midwest. So when I saw your map, North and South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin, as being representative of the Midwest and such that you could call your conference that, I was very pleased. When I started graduate school in 2001, I was a first-year student in physical chemistry at Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa. Throughout the course of the new student orientation, I met a young man who was to become a good friend who was from a suburb of Cleveland. And as we were getting to know each other a little better, we found out we were in the same program. We were both part of physical chemistry. We both had similar interests, similar research interests to a point. And we introduced each other and said where we were from. And I said, oh, I'm from South Dakota, the Midwest. And he said, oh, I'm from the Midwest too. I'm from Ohio. And admittedly, I stepped back and I thought to myself, is Ohio really part of the Midwest? And I didn't say anything to him at that time, but I didn't think that it was. But it turns out there are a lot of people from Ohio who say it is part of the Midwest. So I'm very glad to see that your particular labeling of the Midwest aligns very closely with what mine does as well. I called this talk AI, the New Electricity, and it's not something that I came up with. In fact, a professor at Stanford and a Coursera co-founder, Andrew Ng, said at least 3 years ago, this quote that I have on the screen, just as electricity transformed almost everything 100 years ago, today I actually have a hard time thinking of an industry that I don't think AI will transform in the next several years. And what I really like about this quote is I think it encompasses the way that AI is becoming very pervasive. Not always at the surface, but certainly underneath the surface. And so what I want to do today is talk a little bit about where we've come from, where we are now, and potentials for ways forward. Now, the futures part of the talk is admittedly very short because I don't claim any sort of special insight into what might happen in the future. But there are some pretty good indications about where people think things are going to go. And so I want to share those with you as well. Everything that I say is really couched with a background in NVIDIA. I've been with NVIDIA for 8.5 years, and so I can't think about AI outside of the context of the work that we're doing at NVIDIA. But I think that what I have to say will be applicable to the broader community as well. Specifically at NVIDIA, we identify two giant waves of AI, and this is not just people from NVIDIA, but we like to categorize things this way because we think it's very instructive. In 2012, there was a convolutional neural network invented called AlexNet. And this convolutional neural network, or CNN, often abbreviated, really changed image classification and changed deep learning forever. Alex Krzyzewski and his team at the University of Toronto entered a competition called ImageNet, and they used GPU computing and convolutional neural networks to win this competition in a way that really shocked the community and shocked the industry. And for the next few years, there was rampant research done in CNNs and image recognition, to the point now where image recognition, image classification, image type tasks can be done with relative ease at an accuracy that is on par with humans, or sometimes even called superhuman. The next giant wave of AI occurred really in the 2018 timeframe with BERT Transformer, a neural network for conversational AI, if you can say it that way. In other words, the ability to listen to a phrase, listen to a sentence, parse what it means, and then even answer back. So this is taking artificial intelligence to a totally new level. And I'm going to talk about a number of different use cases in the talk today. As we talk about the two giant waves of AI from 2012 all the way through 2018 and beyond, it's important to understand just how much computational power is required to work on these neural networks, to train these neural networks. Now, this is a scale from 2012 all the way through 2020, or through 2019 really, that shows the amount of computational power required to train a neural network. Now notice the scale at the top says petaflops per day in training, so petaflop per second day. And the scale on the left is a log scale, as you see. So AlexNet way on the left in 2012-2013 timeframe. And then you look way on the right to this neural network called GPT-2, which we'll talk about in a little bit, a conversational AI neural network. Notice the change in the scale, the change in the magnitude, the order of magnitude from the left side of the curve to the right side of the curve, really illustrating just how much computational power is required to work on these neural networks and bringing to bear all the tools that NVIDIA has with GPUs to help these neural networks perform at a very high level. Now, coming back to conversational AI, I hope you'll indulge me in a little experiment. When I was putting this talk together, I went to a website called talktotransformer.com, and this is a website that uses the GPT-2 neural network for conversational AI. And this is a neural network that was invented by OpenAI, an artificial intelligence consortium. And what I did was I typed in the underlined text into the box, and then the neural network created the rest of the text. So I'll just read it for you. So I typed in the graduates of Milwaukee School of Engineering, and then the AI system replied with the rest, or finished the sentence. The graduates of Milwaukee School of Engineering can look forward to careers in a variety of fields, including hardware, electronics, business, and system design, aerospace, environmental and technical monitoring, renewable energy, semiconductors, sensors, and photonics, medical devices, and medical instrumentation. Now, that's a pretty wordy sentence. Lots of semicolons, lots of commas, but it's a passable sentence given the start I gave the neural network. Right? The sentence actually makes sense and may be partially true. That just kind of goes to show you how far neural networks have come in terms of conversational AI. Now, just to show you that I tried other different options, I actually tried another phrase, and I said the attendees of the Midwest Instruction and Computing Symposium, and the neural network replied with, "Here at Purdue University, we're keenly aware of Microsoft's latest accomplishment and looked forward to seeing the next major stage in the desktop computing evolution. It is worth noting that the Windows 8 flagship operating system was not the only newly developed Microsoft product on display at the symposium." Now, this is actually kind of humorous because this is clearly not correct. and it doesn't make sense, right? We're not at Purdue University. We were at the Milwaukee School of Engineering. We weren't talking about Microsoft or Windows 8. So this is a deficiency in this particular neural network, right? But mainly because of the training data it used. And you will notice another thing, that even though the sentence is not accurate, it does make sense, right? The sentence makes sense. It's a well-formed English sentence and actually uses nouns and verbs in the right places, and it actually has meaning. It's not the meaning uh, that we need, but it does have meaning, which is interesting in and of itself. For the next few minutes in the talk, I want to show some examples of how artificial intelligence is transforming industries via examples. I grew up in a rural town in South Dakota. My wife's family are farmers in South Dakota. So this is a particular use case of artificial intelligence that's near and dear to my heart. I won't read all of the text on this particular slide, but essentially this company called Blue River, which got purchased by John Deere a couple of years ago, is using artificial intelligence to identify weeds in this field. And then when the weeds are identified, the herbicide is applied directly to the weed. Now their claim is that because it's very targeted herbicide usage, it actually results in using 90% less herbicide. So that is an amazing statistic when you think about farming in the Midwest, in the Dakotas, Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. If there were some technology available that could be used to reduce the amount of herbicides used by 90% and still get the same effective result, that would be a groundbreaking result, especially in our area of the country, which is full of corn and soybeans and Roundup ready products that use lots and lots of herbicides, admittedly. Shifting gears a little bit to talk about a couple of different examples in the industrial chemical industry. This particular example was a partnership between NVIDIA and Dow Chemical, where Dow is looking at building synthetic chemicals that have particular properties. And so what you typically do is you would do some computational simulations, and then you would start to build these molecules in a wet lab, right? All of which takes time and energy. And what Dow is actually using is GPU-powered deep learning to build novel molecules that haven't been thought of before, but that fit the criteria for the potential to have specific molecular properties. So this is sort of flipping science on its head and saying, generate me a set of molecules that has a particular property, and when they get the results of those, then they can go and build those in the real wet labs. And so what you can see actually on the left side is this particular AI system produced 3 million promising chemical leads in 1 day on an NVIDIA DGX1. Now this is a remarkable speed up improvement from what they had been doing before. They're really using AI to search the potential chemical space of all conceivable compounds. Very interesting use case. Another use case in the chemistry realm has to do with the study of molecular energies and the computation of molecular energies. Now, calculating a molecular energy, or basically the free energy or the potential energy of a molecule, is a very important step in terms of understanding the stability of molecules. And as you can see here, the University of Florida and the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill have developed this specific neural network, which they call Anakin. And this is used to reproduce molecular energy surfaces. What does that mean? That means that it's actually using artificial intelligence instead of a computer simulation to zero in on the actual energy of the molecule. And then when you have that closeness, then you can finally run traditional quantum chemistry simulations for verification. But again, it's an opportunity to speed up part of the calculation by really large orders of magnitude to search the space of potential molecules to identify things like drug targets and things of that nature. This particular use of artificial intelligence in research was done by Oak Ridge National Laboratory using their Summit supercomputer powered by NVIDIA GPUs and IBM CPUs. And what they were studying were the genetics. They were doing some genetics simulations to try to learn more about opioid addiction. In other words, do people who get addicted to opioids, do they have specific genetic markers or do they have specific genetic predispositions? And the reason why one would want to know this information is because if you knew that a particular set of people with particular genetic traits had a predisposition to opioid addiction, then when they were being treated for other medical situations, they could be prescribed drugs other than opioids, right? And so they were studying and trying to study opioid addiction at the genetic population level. Staying in the healthcare field for a moment, one of the really interesting use cases that we have seen comes out of Geisinger Health. Now, Geisinger Health is a regional healthcare center, healthcare consortium. I believe it's headquartered in Pennsylvania. And they have been some of the earliest EMR, electronic medical records adopters of any healthcare system in the US. And so they have great sets of records, and they're using GPUs and artificial intelligence to great success in a number of specific ways, one of which I'll call out here that's described on the bottom, which is that they have a system set up so that head CTs can be read very quickly. And it says identify acute cases within seconds. So what is the value there? Well, radiologists are often bogged down with hundreds and hundreds of cases they have to read. If there was some way to prioritize these cases with an automated system, then they would be able to read the high priority cases first and the low priority cases last. And so that's what this particular thing is doing. It's actually an AI system that helps to prioritize CT cases of head CTs, so the radiologist can see them and handle them as quickly as possible. Shifting gears a little bit to customer service, KLM and a company called Digital Genius partnered together to work on customer service, the so-called, maybe you'd call it a chat bot, in terms of helping customer service agents prioritize and answer questions as efficiently as possible. So all of us probably have some experience with really poor chat bots, but this one actually is quite impressive. Notice the numbers on the slide. Their social media service agents handle 15,000 requests per week. And so you can see that what happens is as the requests come in, a specific reply is generated, and then the human agents either choose to approve or not approve the suggested reply. Sort of like on your Gmail, the auto reply or the tool that helps you to make a sort of a generic reply based on what the message was to you. This particular use case of artificial intelligence is one that should be near and dear to most of our hearts. If you've ever sent a piece of mail and it leaves your house and goes through various sorting facilities and ends up at the destination, we all can appreciate what a logistical feat that is. NVIDIA and the U.S. Postal Service started working together last year on a project to help improve the sorting of mail, both mail, letter mail, and packages. And as you can see, almost 500 million pieces of mail and parcels are delivered on a daily basis, so this has to be a highly automated system. And the coolest part about this particular delivery service is that the new GPU-powered system processes these packages 10 times faster and with higher accuracy than what they had been using before. So very, very high increase in efficiency and better accuracy as well. Very interesting use case. Another interesting use case that is actually quite appropriate right now to discuss. Walmart and NVIDIA are working together on better demand forecasting. Basically, as you can suspect, Walmart is a world leader in logistics, moving product around, getting product where it's needed, right? And Walmart Labs data science team and NVIDIA have been working together on improving how to forecast your demand, right? And especially in this particular time, having great demand forecasting is super critical to making sure that the product is on the shelf when it should be. I want to show you an interesting video that our team put together about NVIDIA's work in autonomous vehicles as an example. Again, I don't want to read all the slides, read everything on the slide, but I think it's important to understand just how ubiquitous transportation is and passenger transportation and transportation of goods is in our economy, in the U.S. And in the global economy, really. And so what I'm about to show you is a video clip of an NVIDIA self-driving car, a car that's outfitted with LiDAR and radar and camera sensors and other things like that, and that uses many different neural networks fused together to both perceive the physical space around it and then actuate the brake pedal, the gas pedal, the steering mechanism, and so forth. And you'll see it's very, very interesting, all the things that go into making a car drive by itself. And so the video that I'm about to show you will illustrate this. And this is basically a big loop around the Bay Area, starting and ending at NVIDIA headquarters in Santa Clara.
Do not use your phone.
Now I want to stop the video right here for just a moment because I want you to see what's happening here. On the left side it says real, and on the right side it says NVIDIA Drive Sim. Right? This is a simulated environment. Now why would you want that? Well, basically to create a self-driving car AI system, you need to drive hundreds of thousands and millions of miles to have enough training data to build a reliable neural network. It's just not feasible to drive a car for millions of miles, right? But what it is feasible to do is to build a virtual world, a simulated world that looks similar to the real world, and then let your car drive in that. It's almost like Grand Theft Auto or your favorite video game where you're driving, right? The AI system is really learning from a simulated world. And so we built this NVIDIA Drive Sim simulated world so that the car can learn and be trained in a simulated world so we don't have to drive millions of miles. Let me continue. Now I want to stop it again for just a brief moment. What's going to happen next is the NVIDIA car is going to exit. Now notice there's a police officer here on the off-ramp. Notice how the car maneuvers appropriately around the police officer, right? There's a vehicle in its way. The car knows that I shouldn't just stop behind the cop, but actually go around it. So notice that. The last example that I want to share with you has to do with our robotics platform at NVIDIA, both the hardware and the software. And because our creative and our marketing teams put together such great videos, I love to show these to people to sort of show you the art of the possible and how we're working together to make robots more smarter robots, intelligent machines. The world is going IoT, right? There are billions and potentially trillions of Internet of Things IoT endpoints that will have to be managed. And so let me give you a little flavor for what that looks like at NVIDIA as well. I want to stop it here again just for a moment. Take a look at what's happening. On the right is the actual physical arm, the physical robot, mixing drinks, as it were. And on the left is a simulated environment where the robot is mixing drinks. Again, the use of a simulated environment to augment the real-world environment to train these robots. As I close the talk today, I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about the impact of AI, both in terms of how AI has the potential to change jobs, and I want to talk very briefly about some challenges and leave you with some food for thought. I read a quote a couple of years ago about robots taking over humans' jobs or robots replacing humans. It's sort of a knee-jerk reaction when you hear that a robot can do a job that a human used to do. But in the article that I read, what the writer said is, we don't want to replace humans with robots. We want to take the robot out of the human. And I think that's so true in terms of where AI, robotics, automation will come into play in this 21st century. Industry, manufacturing, healthcare, transportation. In all these cases, we don't really want to replace humans with robots. We want to take the robot out of the human. I think it's a great quote. So when you think about taking the robot out of the human, Where will AI have the most impact? And really, where has had AI up to this point had the most impact, right? I think it's becoming increasingly clear that mundane and repetitive tasks will be automated. This already happens on many assembly lines where the robots handle these tasks instead of humans. My brother-in-law, as I mentioned earlier, is a small family farmer in South Dakota. He purchased a new tractor about 10 years ago from John Deere. And part of purchasing a new tractor means you can actually go to Waterloo, Iowa, and see the tractor come off the assembly line and start it up for the first time. And he invited me along. And what we saw was just amazing automation. Robots did the painting, robots moved the chassis around. It was just an amazing feat even 10 years ago of manufacturing automation, right? And I think that's only going to continue. Artificial intelligence and the ability to use AI is going to get rid of mundane and repetitive tasks. And it will really free up humans for more creative and interpersonal tasks, tasks that robots can't do, and tasks that are really require human creativity. One thing is becoming increasingly clear, though, is that the workforce will need to be more adaptable. It could be the case that for some of you students in college now, there will be lots of sea changes throughout the course of your career, and you'll have to reinvent yourself. You'll have to learn new skills in the middle of your career. It's probably likely you won't do the exact same thing for the next 30 years. Flexibility will be really important. Obviously, there are challenges with using AI, right? There are many challenges, and I've listed 4 here. There are certainly many more than this, but these are 4 that come to mind. The first one is explainability. In other words, if you're using an AI system, what's happening under the covers? They sort of behave like a black box. Uh, why was a particular decision made? Now you can imagine if your Netflix recommendation is incorrect, that's annoying, but that's not a big deal, right? But if a medical diagnosis is incorrect, that is a big deal, and that does need to be vetted, right? So explainability, understanding what's happening under the covers in neural network, uh, an active area of research. Bias. Bias is the notion that a neural network system is only as good as the data that was fed into it. And so if you have data from a healthcare system in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the population is relatively homogeneous. Caucasian, mostly of European descent, right? So there's not a huge ethnic diversity. Uh, and so that data and that judgment you make using a neural network that was trained on people in Sioux Falls, South Dakota will most likely not be applicable for another city like Chicago, like Milwaukee, maybe even like Des Moines. Malicious attacks. These are things that maybe you don't think about too much, but if you think about an autonomous vehicle, for instance, when I say pedestrians controlling self-driving cars, what I mean is this. A self-driving car will certainly have some ability to avoid pedestrians, right? To stop for pedestrians, to harm nobody, right? To avoid collisions. So what's to stop me from crossing the street in front of a swift-moving self-driving car? The self-driving car is going to see me, and it's probably going to slam on the brakes, right? So there has to be some way to account for these types of things where other people use what they know about the autonomous vehicles against them, right? Another obvious malicious use of AI, fake photos and videos used to propagate false information, right? And then there are ethical implications, right? Lots of ethical implications about using these automated systems to make big decisions. So there are tons of challenges on the horizon, but there are also lots of opportunities. I would be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit jealous of all of you graduates and young students right now who have essentially a whole career ahead of you, potentially working in artificial intelligence. It's extremely exciting. I want to leave you with uh, a thought about how AI is transforming our world and how it might transform our world. On the left is a picture of a horse and carriage, a couple horses and a carriage, right? This was a mode of transportation, horse-drawn carriage, or even just riding horses. On the right is a photograph of my family, my wife and kids and some nephews and nieces and my parents-in-law on a horseback ride uh, a couple of years ago on vacation in the Black Hills of South Dakota. So in the span of roughly 100 years, horses went from being the workhorses of transportation to being a leisure activity. Like we had to pay to go ride a horse, right? Horses are mostly leisure activities. They're not used for transportation much anymore. They are used as a leisure activity. So they went from transportation to leisure in the span of about 100 years. The question I want to leave you with is the same thing true about cars? Right? We have autonomous vehicles, and on the left is a picture of a BMW, and on the right is a picture of me and a few of my nephews and nieces and kids in a UTV driving around again the Black Hills. So what if it is the case in the near future that instead of driving cars to get from point A to point B, vehicles are autonomous, or we have other forms of transportation, such that the act of driving a vehicle turns into a leisure activity instead of something that's a drudgery, a commute that's a drudgery that we're forced to do. This is not an original idea. I didn't come up with this, but I heard it again in a talk previously, and I thought it was really interesting because you compare horses to how they used to be modes of transportation and working in fields, and now they're just leisure activities. What if the same were true about cars? What if in 30 years, the only way we drive a car is we go to some controlled racetrack or some off-road place and just drive a car for a few hours and get it out of our system, and that's what we did. I think it's a really interesting and thought-provoking uh, idea to think that maybe in our lifetime a car might be something for leisure and not for transportation or not for work. I want to conclude again by flashing the quote from Andrew Ng on the screen, thinking again about how artificial intelligence has the opportunity to transform just about everything that we do and all the ways that we do what we do. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really exciting. As I mentioned earlier, those of you that are in school now have the opportunity to spend your entire career interfacing in some fashion with artificial intelligence, what I think is going to be really, really exciting. And again, I would be lying if I didn't say that I wasn't a little bit jealous to think about an entire career ahead of me working on the cusp of artificial intelligence. It's just really, really exciting to think about. And with that, I want to end the content portion of my talk and just put a small advertisement out there for all of you in the audience watching. Our annual GPU Technology Conference, that is NVIDIA's annual GPU Technology Conference, is typically held in San Jose, California, usually the third or fourth week in March. This year, obviously, it's been shifted to an online conference, just like the MICS conference that we're part of now, which has one of the ramifications of that is that anybody can log in and watch any of the talks. So if you just would love to have everybody jump online, visit nvidia.com/GTC, and by registering, you'll have the opportunity to see all of the talks that we're posting online and to get a flavor for just what is the state of the art in artificial intelligence and high performance computing in all kinds of areas: robotics, graphics, computational chemistry and physics, astronomy, engineering, media and entertainment, just about every industry you can imagine. Search, cloud service providers doing search and other things like that, conversational AI. Would love to have everybody jump on and take a look at our GPU Technology Conference. All the content is available digitally. And with that, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in today. Really appreciate your time, appreciate your flexibility in listening to this talk online instead of in person. Again, I'm sure that all of us would have preferred to be in person in the Milwaukee School of Engineering, the new building that they put up earlier this year. That would have been a great opportunity for us to get together. But be that as it may, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you today, the opportunity to that Derek Riley from MSOE and the other organizers afforded me in sharing some things with you today. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for tuning in.